Bring the king's secret lover forward. The voice didn't echo. It cut, sharp and final, slicing through the grand hall like winter air, and in that instant, every whisper died. Lily Carter's breath caught as cold hands closed around her arms, pulling her from the edge of the room into the center of 1,000 watching eyes, her worn heels clicking too loud against polished marble that reflected chandeliers worth more than she would earn in a lifetime. Don't fall, don't shake, don't. Too late. Her fingers trembled anyway. She kept her head down, just like she'd learned, just like she always did, because girls like her survived by being invisible. But tonight, invisibility had failed her. The crowd parted as if she carried something contagious, something dangerous, and when she finally lifted her gaze, her eyes found him. Lucian Blackwood sat on the obsidian throne, still as stone, one hand resting against the armrest, posture perfect, expression unreadable. He didn't look at her, not once, and somehow that silence felt louder than any accusation. 7 private meetings. A council elder announced, his voice smooth but merciless. A human girl entering restricted grounds again and again. What would you call that? A ripple moved through the court, not loud, but alive, like a living thing. Curiosity, disgust, hunger. Lily swallowed hard, her pulse loud in her ears, because they were right. There had been nights, quiet and impossible, moments she still wasn't sure were real, moments when he had looked at her. Not like this, not like she was nothing. Answer. The elder pressed, stepping closer, his presence colder than the room itself. Lily opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say that wouldn't destroy everything? What could she say that wouldn't destroy him? Take her. The command came without hesitation. A guard moved, his grip firm around her wrist, and for a second, everything seemed to move normally, until it didn't. The moment his skin touched hers, the air changed, subtle, but undeniable. A flicker of warmth beneath her skin, then light, soft at first, then brighter, spreading across her wrist in delicate, glowing lines. Lily gasped, trying to pull back, but the symbol was already there, alive, shifting, ancient in a way she couldn't understand. The guard froze. The whispers stopped. The entire hall seemed to inhale and forget how to breathe. Impossible, someone whispered. Lily stared down at her own hand, heart racing, mind scrambling for something rational, something human, but nothing about this felt human anymore. And then, movement, slow, deliberate, undeniable. Lucian Blackwood rose, not abruptly, not in anger, but with a quiet authority that made the chandeliers tremble just slightly above them. Every vampire in the room stepped back without thinking. He took one step forward, then another, descending from the throne as if the entire world had shifted around him. His eyes lifted at last, locking onto hers, and this time, there was no distance, no indifference, only something deep and dangerous and impossibly certain. You shouldn't have touched her, he said softly, and the room felt 10 degrees colder. The elder stiffened, recovering just enough to say, "She is human." But Lucian didn't even look at him. His gaze never left Lily as he spoke again, quieter this time, but absolute. She was. The word hung in the air, heavy, impossible to ignore. Lily felt it before she understood it, a shift in the room, in the way every pair of eyes locked onto her like she had become something else entirely. She looked down again at her wrist, at the glowing symbol that pulsed faintly beneath her skin, not painful, not burning, but alive, as if it had always been there waiting to be seen. That is not possible, the council elder said, but his voice no longer carried the same certainty. There was doubt now, and something deeper beneath it, something close to fear. Lucian continued his descent, each step measured, controlled, until he stood only a few feet away from her. Up close, the air around him felt different, colder, sharper, like standing at the edge of something vast and ancient. Lily's breath slowed without her permission, her fear tangled with something she could not name. Explain this, another council member demanded, stepping forward but not too close, not after what they had just witnessed. A human cannot carry a royal mark, the elder added, his gaze fixed on Lily's wrist. Lucian finally turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge them, but not enough to give them control. You assume she is only what she appears to be, he said, his voice calm. But there was an edge beneath it now. Something warning, something final. Lily shook her head softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I do not understand any of this. And it was the truth. She did not understand the symbol, the silence, or why he was looking at her now like she mattered more than everything else in the room. For a brief second, something flickered in his expression, something almost human, almost gentle, but it vanished just as quickly. You were not meant to, he said quietly, and the words settled into her chest like a secret she had never asked to carry. The council erupted again, voices overlapping, arguments forming, but none of it seemed to reach him. He stepped closer, closing the distance. Completely, and for the first time, Lily realized there was nowhere left to run, not from them, not from him, and certainly not from whatever had just awakened inside her. This changes nothing, the elder insisted, though his tone lacked conviction. The laws are clear, but Lucian did not respond immediately. Instead, he reached out slowly, deliberately, and without touching her. His presence alone seemed to steady the glowing symbol on her skin. The light softened, settling, as if it recognized him. And that was when the room truly understood. This was not an accident. This was not a mistake. Lily Carter was no longer invisible. And whatever she had become, it was now tied to the most powerful being in that room in a way no law could easily undo. What are you suggesting? The elder demanded, but Lily did not answer him. She was not listening to the room anymore. She was listening to the sudden, disorienting shift inside her. Her breath hitched, just once, sharp and unexpected, as the warmth in her chest surged too fast, too strong, like her body had missed a step it did not know how to recover from. Her vision flickered, just for a second, the edges of the room sharpening. Unnaturally, every detail too clear, every sound too loud. She stumbled half an inch back, barely noticeable, but Lucian saw it instantly. His hand lifted, not touching her, but close enough to steady the space between them. Easy, he said, low and controlled, and the single word grounded her more than anything else. The surge slowed, not fading, but settling, like something adjusting to her instead of overwhelming her. Lily exhaled slowly, her fingers curling slightly as the symbol on her wrist pulsed again, this time in rhythm, not chaos. It is not just forming, one council member whispered, his voice tight with unease. It is responding, and that changed everything. The elder's gaze snapped back to her, sharper now, calculating faster. Then it can still be interrupted, he said quickly, stepping forward, but not too close. Before it stabilizes completely, the suggestion hung there, thin but dangerous. And for the first time, Lily understood what that meant. Not just removal, but erasure of whatever was happening to her. Her chest tightened again, fear flickering back, but weaker this time, held in place by something stronger beneath it. Lucian moved before the thought could fully form. One step, then another, placing himself fully between her and the council. No, he said, quieter than before, but heavier, final. The air shifted again, subtle but unmistakable, and no one tried to move past him. You would risk everything for something you cannot define. The elder pressed, but his voice lacked the edge it once had. Lucian did not look at him. He did not need to. You mistake uncertainty for weakness, he replied, calm, precise. Behind him, Lily steadied her breathing, the rhythm aligning again with that deeper presence, no longer fighting it, no longer afraid of it. She lifted her gaze, her voice quieter now, but clearer. It is not something new, she said, and this time she did not hesitate. The words came from somewhere deeper than thought, somewhere that felt older than fear. It is something returning. The room stilled, not out of shock, but recognition. Lucian's expression shifted, just slightly, a flicker of something that had been waiting for this moment. You feel it, he said softly, and Lily nodded faintly, her hand lowering as the light on her skin stabilized, no longer spreading wildly, but forming with precision. Not memories, she whispered, but something close to them. The elder exhaled slowly, his certainty unraveling thread by thread. If that is true, he said carefully, then this is not a bond. And for once, no one interrupted him. Lily looked up, her fear gone now, replaced by something steadier, something unshakable. Lucian finished the thought without hesitation, his voice low but absolute. It is a convergence. And that word did not echo. It settled, deep and irreversible. The council did not argue this time. They could not. Because the moment Lily stood straighter, the moment the symbol on her skin stopped flickering and became something whole, they all understood. This was no longer something that could be stopped. It was something that had already begun rewriting everything they thought. They controlled. The shift was no longer subtle. It spread through the hall like a silent storm, not loud, not chaotic, but undeniable, bending attention, bending authority, bending the invisible structure that had ruled this place for centuries. Lily could feel it now, not just around her, but within her, a steady presence that grew stronger with every breath she took, as if something ancient had awakened and was slowly remembering itself. She lifted her hand slightly, watching as the glowing symbol responded. The light no longer flickering, no longer uncertain, but steady, controlled, almost calm. It is stabilizing, someone whispered from the edge of the council, and this time no one tried to deny it. No one could. The elder's expression hardened, but beneath it, there was calculation now, not outrage, not dismissal, but something colder, more strategic. Then the situation has changed, he said carefully, his voice regaining a measured tone. If the mark is real, then it is not merely a violation. It is a threat to the order we have maintained. His gaze shifted fully to Lucian, and that order does not belong to one man alone. A few heads nodded, slowly, cautiously, as if testing the weight of those words before committing to them. Lily felt the tension spike again, but this time she did not shrink from it. She stood still, her breathing steady, her mind clearer than it had been moments ago. Whatever fear had held her before was fading, replaced by something quieter, something stronger, not confidence, not yet, but awareness. She was no longer the same person who had been dragged into this room. Lucian did not respond immediately. Instead, he studied the council, his expression unreadable, but his presence unmistakable, filling the space without effort. "You speak of order," he said at last, his voice even, controlled. "But you forget who defined it." The words did not rise, did not sharpen, yet they landed with weight that silenced several voices instantly. The elder's lips tightened, but he did not retreat. "And you forget," he replied, "that even kings are bound by the laws that sustain their rule." The statement lingered, bold in a way few would dare. Lily glanced between them, realizing this was no longer about her alone. This was something deeper, something older, a fracture that had been waiting for the right moment to surface. The symbol on her wrist pulsed again, and this time, the warmth spread further, across her shoulder, down her spine, steady and grounding, as if reinforcing her presence in the room. She inhaled slowly, her posture straightening without effort, her gaze lifting to meet the council not as someone beneath them, but as someone they could no longer ignore. "If you believe this is a threat," she said softly, her voice carrying more clearly than she expected, "then perhaps you should ask why it happened at all." The words surprised even her, but they did not feel wrong. They felt true. The room stilled again, not out of shock this time, but attention. Lucian's gaze flickered toward her briefly, something unreadable passing through his expression, something close to approval, though he said nothing. The elder studied her now, not as a servant, not as an intruder, but as a variable he had not accounted for. "Careful," he said slowly. "You are stepping into matters far beyond your understanding." But Lily did not look away. "Then explain them," she answered, quieter this time, but unyielding. For a moment, no one spoke, no one moved, because the truth had settled into the room, heavy and irreversible. This was no longer a secret being exposed. This was a balance being rewritten, and for the first time, the council was not certain they were the ones in control. The question lingered, hanging between them like something fragile and dangerous, and for a moment no one answered, not because they could not, but because the truth behind it was something none of them wanted to say out loud. Lily could feel their hesitation, could sense the subtle shift in the room as attention turned not just toward her, but inward, towards something buried beneath layers of tradition and control. The elder finally exhaled slowly, his gaze steady but heavier now. "Some things are not explained," he said, choosing his words carefully. "They are contained." A quiet murmur followed, softer this time, less certain, as if even that answer no longer felt sufficient. Lily's brow furrowed slightly, the warmth in her chest pulsing again in response, almost like a silent disagreement. "Contained," she repeated under her breath, the word feeling wrong the moment it left her lips, like it belonged to a world she was no longer part of. Lucian's presence shifted beside her, subtle but immediate, as if he had been waiting for that exact reaction. "That is the difference," he said calmly, his voice cutting through the tension without effort. "Between what you have built and what this is." He gestured slightly toward Lily, not dismissive, but deliberate. "You control what you understand, and you fear what you cannot." The statement settled over the council like a weight they could not easily push back against. The elder's expression hardened again, but it was not the same confidence as before. It was resistance, strained and careful. "And you believe this is beyond control?" he challenged, though the edge in his voice had dulled. Lucian did not hesitate. "I know it is," he replied, and that certainty shifted something deeper than argument. Lily felt it too, not in their words, but in the way the symbol on her wrist responded, glowing faintly brighter, as if recognizing the truth in his statement. She inhaled slowly, her senses still sharper than they had ever been, the world clearer, more defined, every movement in the room carrying meaning she had not noticed before. "Then why me?" she asked quietly, not to the council this time, but to him. The question was simple, but it carried everything she could not yet understand. Lucian looked at her fully now, no distance, no barrier, and for the first time, there was no power in his gaze, only something older, something almost inevitable. "Because it was always going to be you," he said, and the words did not sound like a choice. They sounded like a fact that had been waiting to reveal itself. A ripple moved through the room again, quieter this time, more unsettled than before. Destiny was not something the council dealt in, not something they could regulate or define. It existed outside their laws, outside their reach. The elder's voice returned, but it lacked its earlier force. "If that is true, then this changes more than you realize," he said slowly, his gaze moving between them, calculating again, but with less certainty than before. Lily felt the weight of that statement settle in her chest, heavier than anything else that had been said, because she was beginning to understand something they were not saying. This was not just about what she had become. It was about what would happen next, and no one in that room, not even the council, seemed prepared for it. The weight of his words did not fade. It settled deeper, pressing into the silence until even the oldest among them seemed uncertain where to stand. Lily felt it in the way no one interrupted this time. No one rushed to speak, as if the room itself had reached a point it could not easily move past. She drew in a slow breath, steady and controlled, but the air felt different now, charged with something unseen, something waiting. "Then say it." A voice finally broke through from the far side of the council, quieter but sharper than before. "If this is beyond law, beyond control, then what exactly are we facing?" The question did not carry accusation, it carried something else, something closer to caution. Lucian did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Lily again, not as a ruler assessing a situation, but as if measuring something far more personal, something tied directly to her. The connection between them pulsed again, subtle but undeniable, and this time Lily did not look away. She held his gaze, even as the symbol on her wrist responded, glowing faintly brighter, the warmth spreading further, reaching her chest, her breath, her thoughts. It was no longer unfamiliar. It was becoming part of her. "You are asking the wrong question," Lucian said at last, his voice steady, carrying across the hall without force. Several council members shifted, their attention tightening, waiting. "This is not about what you are facing," he continued, his tone unchanged. "It is about what has already begun." The statement landed with quiet finality, and this time no one dismissed it. Lily felt her heartbeat align with something deeper, slower, stronger, as if another rhythm had taken hold beneath her own. She glanced down briefly, watching the faint lines extend just a little further along her skin, delicate, precise, forming something she still could not fully understand. A transformation, the elder said slowly, the words sounding heavier than before, as if it carried consequences none of them had prepared for. Or a convergence, Lucian corrected. And that single word shifted everything again. Convergence. Not a change imposed, but something. Meeting in the middle. Something inevitable. The council exchanged looks, subtle but telling, because that idea did not fit into their rules, their systems, their control. Lily swallowed softly, her voice quieter now, but no longer uncertain. And when it is complete, she asked, not just for herself, but for all of them, what happens then? For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Even the faint sounds of the hall seemed to disappear. Lucian held her gaze, and this time, there was no hesitation at all. Then nothing remains the same, he said, and the certainty in his voice left no space for doubt. A chill moved through the room, not from fear, but from realization, because they all understood what that meant. Not just for her, not just for him, but for everything they had built. And for the first time, the council was not preparing to act. They were bracing for what they could not stop. The realization did not break the room. It hollowed it. The kind of silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, filled with thoughts no one dared to speak, calculations no one trusted anymore. Lily stood at the center of it all, but for the first time, she did not feel like she was being dragged by it. She felt anchored. The warmth beneath her skin had grown steadier, no longer pulsing in uncertainty, but moving with quiet purpose, as if it knew exactly what it was becoming even if she did not. She lifted her hand again, slower this time, watching the fine lines of light extend further along her wrist, branching with delicate precision, forming something more intricate, something deliberate. It was not random. It was a pattern. It is aligning, one of the council members said under his breath, unable to hide the tension in his voice. With what? Another asked, but no one answered, because they all knew the only answer that made sense, and none of them wanted to confirm it. Lily felt it before she understood it. A pull, subtle but constant, not forcing her, not controlling her, but guiding her awareness outward. Her gaze shifted, almost instinctively, back to Lucian. He was already looking at her, not surprised, not questioning, but waiting. The connection between them was no longer something hidden in glances or silence. It was visible now, undeniable, something that even the council could see in the way the air seemed to shift when they stood too close. This is not how a bond forms, the elder said, though the certainty in his voice had thinned, stretched too far. No, Lucian replied calmly. It is not. And that agreement unsettled the room more than denial ever could. Lily's breath slowed again, her thoughts clearer, sharper, as if something within her was organizing the chaos, placing pieces where they belonged. Then it is not just a bond, she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. But the words carried. The elder's gaze snapped. Back to her, sharper now, searching. What are you suggesting? He asked, but Lily did not answer immediately. She was listening, not to them, not to the room, but to that quiet presence beneath her thoughts. It was not a voice. It was a knowing, fragments of understanding forming without explanation. It is not something new, she said slowly, each word more certain than the last. It is something returning. The room stilled again, deeper this time, as if the walls themselves had heard her. Lucian's expression changed, only slightly, but enough. Recognition, not surprise, not disbelief, but confirmation. You remember, he said softly, and this time it was not a question. Lily shook her head faintly. Not memories, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt, but something close to it. The symbol on her wrist flared briefly, brighter than before, and the warmth surged again, stronger, spreading across her shoulders, down her spine, grounding her further. The council shifted, unease replacing authority, because this was no longer a situation they could contain with rules or decisions. This was something unfolding on its own terms. If this is true, the elder said slowly, carefully, then this is not just a change in power. His gaze moved between them, calculating again, but now with something else beneath it, something cautious, something almost reluctant. It is a shift in the foundation itself. The words lingered, heavier than any threat. Lily felt them settle. Inside her, not as fear, but as clarity, because for the first time, she understood that this was never about being chosen, or marked, or claimed. It was about something far older finding its way back through her. And as she looked at Lucian again, she realized he had known that all along. The difference was, now, so did she. And that changed everything. The silence that followed was no longer uncertain. It was absolute. No one moved. No one interrupted, because something had already shifted beyond their reach. Lily stood still, but everything inside her had changed. The warmth that once felt unfamiliar had settled into something steady, something undeniable, like a second heartbeat beneath her own. She lowered her hand slowly, watching as the glowing pattern no longer spread, but stabilized, each line clear, complete, as if it had reached the point it was always meant to reach. The room felt different now, not because of fear, but because of recognition. The council saw it too. Not a possibility, not a threat waiting to grow, but something already real. The elder exhaled quietly, the sound almost lost in the stillness. Then it is done, he said, not with authority, but with reluctant acceptance. The words did not carry command. They carried acknowledgement. Lily felt them settle over her, and for the first time, she did not resist. She did not question. She simply stood there, grounded in something deeper than anything she had known before. Lucian remained beside her, his presence unchanged, but the space between them was no longer distance. It was connection, visible, undeniable, and unbreakable. This will not end here, another council member said, quieter now, no longer challenging, but warning, as if speaking to something inevitable rather than preventable. Lucian turned his head slightly, his gaze sweeping across the room, not dismissive, not aggressive, but final. No, he said calmly. It will not. And that was not a threat. It was a truth none of them could deny. Lily looked at the council one last time, not as someone beneath them, not as someone out of place, but as someone who now stood within a world that had no choice but to acknowledge her. The fear was gone, not because she understood everything, but because she no longer needed to. Whatever this was, whatever she had become, it was not something fragile. It was something meant to endure. She turned her gaze back to Lucian, and for a brief moment, nothing else in the room mattered. What happens now? She asked softly, the question no longer filled with uncertainty, but quiet readiness. Lucian met her eyes, and for the first time, there was no distance, no guarded restraint, only clarity. Now, he said, his voice low but certain, we see what the world becomes when it can no longer ignore what it tried to hide. The words settled into the silence, heavier than anything that had come before, because this was not the end of something. It was the beginning of something far greater, and as the hall remained still,